Okay, folks, it is throwback review time. We are looking back to 1997 and the six-issue miniseries Demonskin. Now, Demonskin number 3 is the issue that I'm going to be looking at specifically. And if you look at the cover price, it might be a little bit hard to see, but it's $3.95 for a black and white comic. That's actually pretty standard for back in the day. I remember when a friend of mine and I put out a couple of 20 to 24 page black and white comics. We charged $3 a piece for those. So I would say that by 1997, charging $4 a piece for a black and white comic, not beyond the pale. So this story was created by Jason Jordan and Matthew Spong, with pencils by Jeremy Hoare, inks, lettering, design, and additional pencils by Jason Jordan, cover by Drew Bickford. And we get a little synopsis of what the series is about. Wrapped in a living exoskeleton, Nathaniel Bishop is consumed by a malevolent entity with sinister purposes. And I have to admit that when I read that, I thought to myself, okay, now what year did Spawn come out? That was 1992, wasn't it? But this series definitely goes in a different direction from Spawn. So, one of the things that I was asked when I was petitioned to do this review was from one of the creators saying, I'd be most interested in hearing your opinion on the art, page layout, if you can follow the flow of the action, if you can pick up a story from just this issue. Is the story interesting? Would you look for other issues? Stuff like that. I was really intrigued by the middle item here. If you can pick up a story from just this issue, because that is something that modern comics suffer a lot from. If you pick up issue number 3 of some limited series that's been released, because these comics are being written for trade paperbacks as opposed to be written to be collected on a monthly basis, then you will often see like either page 1 text recaps on the page, or you will see uh, just just no help whatsoever trying to get your reader into the story from the word go. I mean, these comics are being written for the trade so badly that there's really no help to a reader who's coming in the middle of the story. So if this comic is able to pull that off, I'll be rather impressed. So let's get into the first page. And since the text is a little small, I've reprinted it out to the side. In the quiet stillness of the abattoir, a reunion is underway. Two human like creatures that have existed in and out of semblance for countless centuries stand now in each other's presence, this time harboring human hosts. Military scientist Nathaniel Bishop and ex Gulf War Marine Jacob Cobbs. So you've got this picture here of these two human beings who are enmeshed in these demon skins, and it seems apparent from the broken container behind the characters in the foreground that Jacob Cobbs has been consumed or enveloped by the demon skin that came out of there. And there appears to be a communion of sorts going on between these two characters, such that they're not attacking each other. It's kind of like a brotherly thing going on. And I really like this opening page. This is a page that really draws you in right away, and kind of just in their posture, in their non threatening approach to each other, in the contact they're making with their hands, and in the words that have described it, plus the synopsis blurb on the title page didn't hurt. You're actually getting a whole lot of information about what this comic is about. And I feel like this issue in particular is really doing a good job right from the get go of putting the reader into the story and saying, here's what's happening. So on the next page, we see that Jacob Cobbs is bowing before the sarcophagus that he was entombed in. And we get the text saying, the newborn surveys its former home. 4,000 years of nothing, entombed inside a priceless antique. Recollection. Infuriating. So he's got these memories coming in. Now, I was a little bit I was a little bit mystified by this panel at first, and I think that might be because I was looking at a small version of it, but it was difficult to realize at what angle. We're looking at it from the top down, really. Um, at some point, I was thinking, what is the sarcophagus on the ground now? Because we see that it's kind of laying flat, but it's actually a top down view. And now we have a memory of ancient Egypt, where apparently the creature from the sarcophagus was subjugating a whole bunch of human beings, which you might be able to see in this crowd down here. There are all these human beings who are bowing down, and you've got this pharaoh type creature here who has all this blood draining down the steps. And one of the things that I got a little bit confused about is that on the initial page, it talks about how these creatures have a human host. Now, they now have human hosts. But if that's the case, what did they have back in the day when we're seeing this image of a pharaoh? It looks to me like he's a human host. So is he not? Is he something else? Is this just the creature itself? Or are we actually looking back at another human host and it was just not very well communicated on the first page that these things have had human hosts before? So just a little bit of confusion there. And now it says, a new age, this time blessed with the existence of another, will surely yield a more profitable human harvest. So it looks like the creatures are out to dominate humanity again. And now that there are two of them walking in the world at the same time, there's an even better chance that they'll succeed. However, in this particular panel, we see the first creature actually walking out. This is the Nathaniel Bishop character. He's walking out and leaving the Jacob Cobbs character behind. And I have to wonder, does that mean that they're splitting up? Or is the Jacob Cobbs character going to follow him? We don't know, and we're not going to learn that on this page, and we're not going to learn it on the next page either. So this panel here actually leaves things a bit up in the air. You've got the one character leaving, but we don't know what happens to the other one after that. So now we come to a couple of pages, and these two pages are really a detective going into a house where a lot of killings apparently occurred because there's bloodstains everywhere. And the detective makes a joke saying, the truth is in here. Christ, I'm funny. That's not actually very funny. I don't even know what that's in reference to unless he's making a joke about the X-Files slogan, the truth is out there, and basically inverting it. But one thing I don't like about this particular page is that you don't have any explanatory text to tell you why it is he needs to go into this house or what happened here in this house. You want to be able to tell your audience, here's what's going on, here's why we're at this scene. Obviously some devastation happened here, but for what? In who did it? And why does the detective care? Because we don't know how this is linked with either of the two creatures. It might be, it might not be. We just don't know. And so in the first three panels, I would have had some explanatory text saying, here's the detective is coming on the scene and here's why he needs to get into the building and something like that. And now the last panel on this side, he says Claymore. And I have no idea what that means. Is that supposed to be a name? Is that supposed to be an object? I mean, I think that's a type of grenade, isn't it? Or is it a type of mine? It's a type of mine that you could step on. But obviously he's just holding a piece of paper, so what does he mean by Claymore? That doesn't actually... Oh, wait a minute. I only noticed this just now. He's talking into a telephone of some sort. That was not obvious at all. It was not obvious at all that he was talking into some sort of walkie-talkie, because I thought maybe this hand was holding the flashlight, but he's holding the flashlight with his shoulder pinning it to his cheek. Oh, well, you learn something new with every reading. So Claymore, he says, into the phone, but at the same time, we have no idea who that is. So when this woman appears on the scene, we don't know that she's Claymore. In fact, we don't know that this scene is related to anything at all with the preceding page. So this is not exactly a good jump. she's thinking, finally, this is better be good. And then he says, Claymore. She says, don't touch me. And then they get into an explanation of what has been going on for the last 2 issues. Now, I just want to make note that in the dialogue balloon order, this just barely pulls it off well. And so we've got him saying, calm down, sweetie, read this. This is, you're a scientist. This is going to sound a little crazy. So we're bouncing from this dialogue balloon to this dialogue balloon, but we very, very easily could have come up here. And it's only because this dialogue balloon was shifted a little bit left that we didn't, and the fact that it was eye level with this one. So I almost feel like you got lucky here. So now he's talking about what's going on in the last couple of issues, and I want to say that this actually sums up the last couple of issues pretty well. He says, this huge naked man turns up in Manhattan and wastes some people. He does a whole lot of weird shit with their bodies. That sounds like issue 1 to me. Then he turns up and steals a special forces lunatic we haven't found yet who can still quite conceivably be alive. Well, that sounds like issue 2 to me. And then, the special forces lunatic, I'm guessing, is Jacob Cobbs, who got enveloped by the second of the Demonskins. So now he's going and explaining, some of his theories, what he thinks that the naked man might have been doing, and then he says it's only a matter of time before it finds out about its buddy in Africa. And she asks, what do you think it's going to do? Swim to Africa? He says, I'm not sure. Campbell's going to set me up a meeting with Willard. So we're having some reference to some new characters that we haven't yet encountered. Now, the next page starts with somebody unidentified knocking on a door, and this again is not really that good of a page transition. It takes a little bit to figure out that this guy lying in the bed is the detective, and so he's waking up and realizing that Campbell, who it turns out this guy is coming to his room so that he can tell him about the details of his meeting with Willard. But the jump to this scene, and especially because it's hard to tell that this is the detective, and part of that is just the fact it's a black and white book, but part of it is that it's got various shading in and different facial features, and you don't really have a lot of consistency there. It's not a good segue. I mean, and we don't know how much time has transpired between the meeting with Claymore and now this meeting with Campbell. So there should have been some sort of, the next day, that evening, something like that, that could have told us that some amount of time had elapsed and we're now jumped to a new scene. And also maybe some way to get this detective identified. So after Campbell relates the details to this detective of his meeting with Willard that's upcoming, which apparently is taking place in a park, then they meet, and it's between Detective Bucks and Agent Willard, and I just realized that this is the first time that we see Detective Bucks's name, and this is a very, very common mistake I'm finding among various comic book creators, and it's good to see that it's something that it's something old as the hills, apparently, because this mistake goes all the way back to 1997, and I'm seeing this still happening in 2023, is that there are a lot of people, or a lot of writers, who are not identifying their main characters up front. We saw this in the review that I did of the preview for Fiendish by Irene Strakowski. There is a supporting character in her comic who is like the boon companion of her main character, and he's not named in the first 8 pages of the book, even though he appears on almost every page. So yeah, this is something that really needs to be rectified. It needs to people need to understand what information is available to the reader and what information has yet to be communicated, so that the reader isn't left hanging not knowing who these characters are. I would have identified this character in some sort of caption or something on that page where he's going into the building, because he's doing his investigation. Well, who the heck is he? We know he's a detective, but what is his name? That was the time to give us that information, not just now. So we're looking at this meeting between Detective Bucks and Agent Willard, and basically what Detective Bucks is going to do is just let him know, or let Willard know, that the the creature might be hopping a plane for Africa. But there's a thought balloon that's introduced here that's really jarring because you've got the dialogue going on here. I've told you're a man of persistence, and I gather by all this cloak and dagger that you're still pursuing this case. You know I am. Maybe your superior wasn't clear enough when he said in this case is an FBI matter now. And then you have this thought balloon saying, this guy's a nightmare. It's like, I don't know that that's really what's going on in Vux's mind because it doesn't seem like that's a necessary thing to say. You're already trying to communicate a sense of menace through the dialogue that Willard just delivered. And the idea that you're trying to make sure it hits home with Vux through a thought balloon, that's just kind of it just feels kind of clunky. So I would have put maybe some dialogue, maybe a quip or something like that, or if he's really scared, have him stutter or something in his next response. But to have a thought balloon saying this guy's a nightmare and then basically just go on telling him the information he was going to tell him anyway, I don't think that really follows. So Willard does take the information to heart, so he sets up the FBI and basically has them looking at the airports. And here you have a giant person going through a metal detector, and suddenly it starts beeping, and the FBI show up and draw their guns, and it turns out it's a pro wrestler. And this is actually one of the funnier scenes in the book. You say, hey, what the hell? It's my belt, partners. Now, there's a whole lot of, you can tell there's a whole lot of like spelling and punctuation kind of stuff going in here, but, and you've got one line of dialogue. That's Bobby Fortuna, the famous wrestler. Nobody talks like that. Come on. There would have been. You would have, I mean, the guy probably should have said something like, Bobby Fortuna, the wrestler? Yeah, that is what maybe an FBI agent would say, but that's almost expository dialogue right there. Now, where the demon skin possessing Nathaniel Bishop actually turns out to be is not at any airport. He's actually on a boat, and he's on a boat inside a large crate where he stored himself and some food. And this is where Nathaniel Bishop wakes up and wakes up inside the suit and realizes that, oh my God, he's eaten people and he's killed people to bring along. Now, those two people who are hanging by the neck, unless they are fastened in some way to the wall, to the crate wall behind them, those are not natural hanging positions. I mean, there are enough lynching photos out there that you can look up and get some photorealistic stuff where you can basically see how a person who has been hung by the neck actually looks while hung. It's not pretty, it's very disturbing, but I know from just what I've seen that it doesn't look like that. And then, let's see, necessary food. For the demon skin's journey serves as a cruel reminder for the newly conscious yet paralyzed Nathaniel. So he's basically freaking out over the fact that he's eaten these people. Now, we cut from here to a scene with Willard, who is now going after a boat. And I believe that the boat must have had something to do. In fact, there's an asterisk down here talking about a lifeboat. And the asterisk later on the page is referenced back to issue number 1. But there really needs to be a little more explanation. There's plenty of room for it. You could have had, a whole bunch of expository text right here kind of saying, what is the whole point of this little venture? And they're going out to this boat that has been marooned off the coast of New York. And here's where we run into one trip up as far as the dialogue balloon arrangements goes. It says, now let's see if this ship code matches the same one our boys found on that lifeboat. And in this panel, it is the bottom balloon that is supposed to be read first. But that is not how the eye naturally travels. The eye naturally travels left to right and at the same level. So the next balloon that's going to be naturally read is this clever bastard one, which really comes after the one down at the bottom. So this is kind of the one place where I see a dialogue balloon placement fail. Next, we cut to a scene in which there is a creature in Africa. The creature there is a brother demonskin out in Africa, which attacks these soldiers in a helicopter, causing the helicopter to crash, and the monster begins feasting on the remains of the soldiers in the helicopter. And behind him, you can see off in the distance that the first creature that has possessed Nathaniel Bishop has arrived. And that is the end of the comic. So, made some notes about this. And first thing I wanted to say was it's only 17 pages. That's very, very short. I believe that when I did each of the two #1 issues back in '91, I think I provided either a 20-page story in one of the comics, or in the other comic, I did a 16-page story with a 4-page follow-up. But I would think that when you're asking your reader to pay between $3 and $4 for your comic book, anything less than 20 pages is just inexcusable. It's you've got to give the reader more content than that. The pacing is excellent. I really thought that this is a well-paced series overall, because judging from those two dialogue balloons that described what happened in issues 1 and 2, I can see where whoever it is that planned out the series planned it out very well. We know this happens in issue 1, this happens in issue 2, this happens in issue 3. You can I can't really predict where the series goes from there. But I would bet that the pacing is just as consistent. It does get disjointed in a lot of places. There are a lot of jump cuts where we don't really know what we've jumped to. Now, the one saving grace about that is that it usually only takes us one page, or just reading that particular page, to realize that is, what it is we were supposed to know, what it is we were supposed to see. Like, one of the things that really bugs me is, like, one of the complaints I made about ISOM #1 and the problem of the stairs. And people like to laugh at me for saying this, but you see a woman coming down a set of stairs, and you have no idea for about 4 pages where those stairs came from. You have no idea whatsoever. They're not referenced again for another 4 pages, and so you actually, once you see the stairs again, you then have to realize, oh, those are the same stairs from 4 pages ago. Now I know where I am and what's happening. And that's just lethal to a comic. Now, what happens in this comic is that by the time you get to the end of the page, or at very worst, maybe the next page, you know where you are and you know what's going on. So even when I got lost because of the disjointedness going from scene to scene, it wasn't so bad that I couldn't pick up on it again pretty much on that same page. So this one does not do as bad a job as I saw, like, in ISOM #1 in that particular case. Now watch those dialogue balloons. We saw one place where there was a dialogue placement fail, and one that came very close. You've got to just make sure that your dialogue balloons, when they're sitting at eye level, especially the readers, or at the same level, the same horizontal level, the reader's eyes are naturally going to go from left to right. And also, what helps a lot in those cases to keep the reader's eye on the right track is also good borders on the panels, which on the first instance, when I was saying this one almost doesn't work, but it actually, pulls it off, there really weren't good panel separations on that. I think most of the panel separation was actually covered up by a dialogue balloon. So just watch the dialogue balloons. Make sure that the reader's eyes are flowing in the right direction. One thing that was it felt a little bit bait and switchy, not to be bad. I mean, it turns out the story's pretty good overall. But the cover and the title page synopsis and the opening splash page, they all make it seem like Bishop is a more active than a passive player. I mean, take a look at this for a second. You've got the cover on which he's got the word run etched into his chest. Now, that's not something we saw in the interior of the book, so I don't know what this is actually a reference to. But is that it almost makes it seem like the character is sending a message to people, and that would be something that I don't know. Would that be something Nathaniel Bishop is sending? It's almost like it portrays an attitude that the character never really exudes. There's nothing in the character as portrayed within the book that would show him as having this run scrawled across his chest. So I don't know where that really comes from, and it kind of makes you feel like the character should have a more malevolent attitude that he never really displays. Same thing here, where you say, wrapped in a living exoskeleton, Nathaniel Bishop is consumed by a malevolent entity with sinister purposes. Well, that makes it seem like Nathaniel Bishop is the lead character of this series, and yet, in this particular issue, we don't really feel like he's a lead character. We feel like he's a character and a major character, but that he's a lead character, he's not really leading anything. He's just kind of along for the ride. Now, of course, we haven't seen what happened with him in issue 1 or issue 2. Maybe he had more thoughts that make him into more of a leading character, but really there was no sort of internalized thought process for most of it. The only time we ever saw any personality out of him was when he woke up in the crate and realized he was eating people. So, yeah, it just didn't feel like this was consistent with what we were seeing in the book. And then last but not least, this opening page where there's nothing going on in Nathaniel Bishop's head. He's just quiet, and the Demonskin is doing all the work and doing the communing with the other Demonskin. I mean, there's no Nathaniel Bishop really in any of this. So, as a personality, as somebody who is a character driving this, and so the synopsis and the cover wind up being a little bit on the misleading side, getting you into the book, and that's why I was asking earlier about well, when did Spawn come out? Because I was really expecting it to be a Spawn type book, but it's not. It's actually more interesting than that. So the last note is this is very competent storytelling. I actually enjoyed this, and even though you had a lot of disjointedness in it, and there were places where you could have had some more exposition, all in all, it was a fairly good book. It was a little too short. Needed another 3 or 4 pages or so in order to really get a lot of content in there. But really, I felt it was a competent book. So, looking at this original question, I'd be most interested in hearing your opinion on these particular things. Art was fine. I had no real issues with the art except for how the bodies were hanging. That was one particular thing, and I think there was that one initial scene where Jacob Cobbs is freaking out, having memories at the sarcophagus, and I didn't know whether the panel was supposed to be read as if it was from top view down, which is what was accurate, or whether the sarcophagus was laying flat. That was a little bit confusing, but that's not bad. I mean, to have just a couple of things like that in there. Page layout, really had no problem with the page layouts at all. I think every page was laid out really well. If you can follow the flow of the action, yeah. I mean, I didn't have any problem getting from panel to panel, and it wasn't like I was trying to, definitely I never ran into situations like I did in Age of Ultron, where I didn't know what panel I was supposed to read next, literally, because of how the pages were laid out. So didn't have any of that problem at all. If you can pick up a story from just this issue, surprisingly, yes. I mean, I don't think I had any problem whatsoever figuring out what it was that went on, not only in the prior 2 issues, but what was going on in this issue. It was all very clear. Reading in the middle of the story did not affect me at all, and there was enough recap material that I could kind of figure out what it was that went on from there. And not only that, but the recap material was sparse enough that I didn't feel like I was getting the full story of what happened in the comic. Like, I would really need, if I wanted to know what happened in those comics, I would need to go get those. And is the story interesting? Yes. I mean, I don't know where it's going from here. I would be curious to see where it's going from there. And I'd also be curious to see how it started in the first place. In which case, yes, I would look for other issues of this. So, yeah, I'm kind of tempted to say, hey, if you've got the other ones on PDF, feel free to send them my way, because I'll be happy to read through these. Um, yeah, I was actually pleasantly surprised by this comic. It's a good effort by an independent publisher, and I think it was a solid book. I'm kind of surprised that I never heard of it at the time, but oh God, if you remember Previews magazine back in the day, oh, they had so many different comics and publishers and stuff like that that oh man, I mean, just to find a comic out of all that that you'd be willing to take a chance on was, I'm sure it was a struggle going even into the late 1990s, which is when this was published. So that is my review of Demonskin #3, a surprisingly good offering from 1997. And kudos to the creators of this. Like I said, if you've got the other issues of this, I wouldn't mind seeing them at all. Uh, and that is what that is all I'm going to say now. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked this review. I just realized, oh dear God, I do have the pages from the comics that I wrote, or at least scripted, back in 1991. I think someday I'm going to have to do throwback reviews to my own comics, and I'm going to be so embarrassed when that happens. Oh, dear heaven. Oh, that's so bad. I'm going to have to go through a ton of these crowd-funded comics previews first because I really I would really spare you some of my writing if I could. But this offering here, Demonskin 3, was really good. So thank you for sending that to me. And if you can get a crowdfunding adventure or crowdfunding venture started where you would reprint this book, it might be worthwhile to do that. I think there's enough good material in there to at least make it worthwhile in PDF form, if not in a solid handheld form. So that's Demonskin #3 for you people. Thank you for watching. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. Please feel free to share this on Twitter, where I cannot. You can find me on gab.com. Feel free to create an account there and send me a chat if you want me to review any of your comics. And I will talk to you later.